Hello everyone, Adam here. So, this story was not originally recorded for Betrayal Month, but given the plot and the name of the story itself, we decided that this would be the best time to release it. However, just a content warning, this story contains mentions of statutory rape as a significant part of the plot. While the story does not have any graphic or explicit description of these events, we understand that some viewers may not feel comfortable with this, and we advise anybody who is uncomfortable to click off this video now. Otherwise, thank you for watching, and enjoy. Hello everybody, and welcome back to Donut Like, Donut Read. I'm Adam, at your service, and with me today I have Luna.
Hello! Adam had a very, very good idea that he's about to tell you all about.
I like to think it's good. This is a little bit different take on what we normally do. We're calling this the Retrospect series. The idea of this was looking at the fanfictions we read when we were kids, when we were younger. And kind of talking about, what these stories did that drew us in, why we liked them. Maybe talk about, some of the things that we don't think aged as well. And so it's a little, while we will make a few jokes here and there, it's a little more of a focus on, the kinds of stuff we liked and how, basically the kinds of stuff we were interested in when we were younger. For me personally, I read a lot of fan fictions back in the early 2000s, because I'm old as hell. And at that time, fanfiction was mostly young people writing. And there's a lot of stories that were maybe a little immature, maybe a little bit like people with a little less life experience was writing this stuff. But when you're young, also, you have a great time with it because your threshold for what you're going to read is a lot. You're willing to read a lot more stuff, basically.
Growing up, let's see, what did I read? I read a lot of, Yu-Gi-Oh! Fan fiction that hopefully most of it is lost to time, mostly because, not a lot of it, especially stuff that was written in late aughts, early 2010s. Not great. Not great. Then I was reading Rise of the Guardian fan fiction. Then I was reading Wreck-It Ralph fan fiction, and then it gets kind of fuzzy. A lot of different. I've sort of dipped my toes in a lot of different fandoms over the years. Some of the stuff I've looked back on it. Some of the stuff it doesn't hold up because it just wasn't great written. And then some of the stuff I look at it and I think it's not that some of the stuff I'm like, this would probably slap if a 13-year-old was reading it. Some of the stuff, the reason why it doesn't hold up anymore isn't because the writing was bad. It's because I'm no longer 12 to 13 years old. I've left this fixed target audience, and I'm self-aware enough to know that.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think when we look back at these stories, we recognize we kind of aged out of them a little bit. And that's okay, because the beauty of fan fiction that way is, anyone can go on and write these things, and sometimes it's kind of how a lot of young writers start getting their start in writing in general, and that's pretty cool, actually, So one of my favorite fandoms growing up was the Harvest Moon fandom. The games are now called Story of Seasons, but back then it was Harvest Moon. It was back in the early 2000s through mid 2000s. It was very, very popular fandom. It's died down a lot since. It's actually one of those fandoms I'm surprised Steel Donut never covered, because there was a lot of material there. I was telling Luna earlier, I think the reason why Harvest Moon was really popular to write fanfiction about is because in the game, your character, the main character doesn't really have much personality except for what you give them, and they end up, they can end up dating, getting married to, and having a child with another character in the village, in the farming town. So it's
kind of like Stardew Valley, I assume. I've never played Stardew Valley.
Yeah, it's a lot like Stardew Valley is a lot like Harvest Moon, is to put it more accurately. So honestly, it lends itself really well to little romantic stories, a lot of fluffy stories, maybe a little bit of drama here and there. It lends itself really easily to fanfic writers to come in and be very creative with it. So it was a lot of fun. This story in particular is a little different though, because present day Adam, I love a good dark fanfiction. I like fanfictions that have heartbreak, moral ambiguity, darker themes, people doing bad things. I love reading them, I love writing them, and I think I can trace my interest in this kind of story back to this story in particular.
It's their fault. They made you this way.
Yeah, thank you, Farmer Jen. Yeah, so this story is called Betrayal. I actually mentioned this story in our Halloween video about what kind of made us afraid, because there's a chapter in this that kind of taps into one of my fears, actually. But the fanfiction, this was what made this fanfiction interesting was it turned the typical plot of these stories on its head, in that instead the farmer character, the protagonist you play as, is kind of an antagonist here, where he's not the main character. He's kind of he's an antagonist in another character's story. Like, instead of like him being the hero who gets the girl, the person that the girl was supposed to get with in the game isn't getting the girl, and it's kind of sad like that, basically. The author in this, Farmer Jen, by her own accord, she was in 9th grade or so when she wrote this, and she doesn't think her stories are very good. She only left them up because people seem to like them. And I will say that I think for this story in particular, I think is very good for something that a 9th grader wrote, because you can kind of tell that she was younger when she wrote it, but I think for a 9th grader, it's pretty solid story, you know?
Yeah.
Which is great. I would love to see what she's not writing anymore. I wish she was. I'll say this ahead of time. Obviously, you know, the author, she's in her mid-30s by now, so, you know, don't contact her, don't review her or anything like that, but Farmer Jen, if by chance you are reading this, like, listening to this video, by the, like, 1 in a million chance, I want to let you know that I love this story. I read it a bunch of times as a kid, and it was a huge influence on the kind of writer I am today, and I really appreciate you. You know?
14-year-old you sculpted him.
Yeah. It's kind of funny when you look back at it like that. Okay. You have the story up, Luna?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
We said we were skipping. Are we still skipping chapter 1 because it's just poetry?
Yeah, the first chapter is just some very basic emo poetry that we all wrote when we were 14. I don't really need to read that. If you want to go look at it, you can check out Betrayal by Farmer Jen on fanfiction.net. I mean, it's something that I would actually recommend. I actually recommend checking this out. Just know that, again, a younger person wrote this, so some of it might not hold up, and that's okay.
Yeah, I'm scrolling through, and like a lot of the sort of, some parts of it I'm scrolling through, a lot of sort of the pitchforks that were slowly being raised in the back. I was like, oh no, the person who wrote this was 14, 15, it's fine. Yeah,
and that's okay. I mean, anyone who wrote fanfiction as a teenager is going to look back on their old work and recognize that, you know, we grew up and we kind of evolved since then, you know? So this Betrayal by Farmer Jen, a series of short stories about the tragic lives of the men in Mineral Town. So, Chapter 2, Betrayal. Have you ever had the one thing you loved most in your life wrenched away from you without warning? Perhaps everything dies someday. But was she still alive when you lost her? Did you have to see her every day after you lost her, though her presence was painful? Had she been your friend and lover for 5 long years? Was she your wife in everything but name? Were you, in fact, hiding the 2 rings that were made to bind you in eternal love on a chain around your neck? Sounds pretty bad, doesn't it? Mind you, I'm not feeling sorry for myself. Those are just the facts. Here's my story. So, coming in pretty strong already, right?
Yeah.
Good old-fashioned angsty writing. I mean, I kind of dig this stuff even now, so what do I can't make any judgment on that. She first came to me when she was 15. Ooh, great.
Bad start. But this was the part where I was looking through, I was like, okay, the author was like 14 to 15 years old. So that knowing the author, that has different vibes than if, like, this was written by Drax.
Yeah. To be fair, though, she acknowledges in this story the inappropriateness of the relationship. So it's not like they knew, and that's kind of the point, though. Also.
Yeah.
Which I think, you know, you can write a story about this sort of thing and understand that, you know, not every story is going to have this, like, perfect moral fairy tale, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you are 15, you don't really care. This stuff doesn't really bother you as much. Requesting that I teach her all I know about my career. Though I was 5 years her senior, I couldn't help running my eyes over her. At first, she seemed very plain. Her chestnut brown hair was cut as short as mine. Her body was hidden by a shapeless blue dress, and only hint of her curve shown on by the apron tied around her slender waist. She had big, soft brown eyes that somehow reminded me of a cow. Hey, Luna.
Yeah?
If we were dating and I said that you had your eyes reminding me of a cow, am I getting a second date?
I mean, it depends on if you're like a Greek mythology nerd, because like that was was a way that Hera was described, like having soft brown eyes like a cow. That is a thing. Like that is I mean, it's an old thing, but that was like a thing that people would use to describe beautiful women. Like specifically like I said, ancient Greece, it was a part of the way. I think it was part of the way that Hera was described, but I'm not.
I think modern day, I don't think it works as well, though. Unfortunately.
Yeah, it was Hera. It was Hera who was described that way.
So I am going to send you a picture in the chat of the character being described here, Ellie from Harvest Moon. One of my favorite characters, actually. She's real cutie. But she's 15 in this story, which starts off at 15. So it's a little, yeah.
I'm gonna look at the eyes of a cow.
What'd you say?
Well, you know, I'm looking at the eyes of a cow right now, and you know what? Maybe.
Yeah, I can kind of see that. I mean, well, the character was designed to be very gentle, kind of be a very like gentle, sweet, motherly type character. So fits.
Yeah, that fits.
Yeah. Gentle, loving. I shook my head quickly, ridding my mind of these thoughts. I was no pedophile, and I refused to look at a minor that way. She was a sweetheart, though, and I took a liking to her. My fondness for her increased as I taught her. She was very quick and wasn't hesitant to ask me questions when she was unsure of something. Those big brown eyes took in everything around her and memorized everything in the immense medical textbooks around her. Generations of skill were passed down to her, as both her mother and her grandmother had both been midwives. By the time she was 17, I made her my assistant nurse. So, not your typical medical degrees here, but that's okay.
I mean, it's fine.
It's a farming town. That's the least of my concerns with this story.
Yeah, man.
I felt my affection for her swell to enormous proportions. I didn't just like this girl. She wasn't just my apprentice. She was my best friend, and I loved her. Okay, yeah, we're getting to little uncomfortable places here. She became the one I ran to with my problems. When I had something to say, she just sat and listened, those soft brown eyes taking in every word I said. She was the first one in the village to learn my real name. To her, I wasn't the distant doctor that was only important when the flu came into town. She knew me as Kevin, the man, someone who she could talk to and come to with her emotional problems, as well as her physical ones. Whoa! Okay, I read that the wrong way.
I think it's like, I broke my arm.
That is the way it's supposed to be, I
got the sniffles.
Yeah. I was something more to her. The summer after she turned 17, she invited me to the beach to watch the fireworks with her. I accepted, and she told me to bring my swimming trunks, and we would be going for a nighttime swim after the show.
You couldn't have pushed that up an extra year?
Yeah, 17. I don't know. I mean, it does kind of imply in the story that she's still too young. Like, even by, like, age of consent differs from place to place, even if, like, under 18 is definitely kind of squicky no matter what. But, yeah. I guess that's part of the story, though.
Yeah, the story does seem to address it. The story does seem to be like, hey, this is a little bit funky.
Yeah, and that's... So we were going for a nighttime swim after the show. When I got to the beach, trunks and towel draped over my arms, she was waiting for me.
What kind of voice are we thinking?
Go for something sweet and kind of like... I don't know, you do a sweet girl voice, I don't know.
Alright, I'm trying to think of one, and hopefully I can keep it consistent. If we ever do any other Harvest Moon, the odds of me remembering this voice for Ellie again
you don't need to worry about it.
Yeah. Sit here, Kevin.
She said, patting a space next to her on the beach towel, and she spread out on the sand. I complied. As the colorful rockets went off in the sky, I felt her lean against me, her head on my shoulder.
Have I ever told you how I feel about you, Kevin? That the name Kevin is just really kind of... I don't know.
It's a perfectly normal name. The thing is, that's actually not even the character's canon name, but that's okay.
Assign Kevin at Fic.
Yeah. He was, like, the character's name is actually in the game, it's just, the name is typically just Doctor. He does have a real name, but it doesn't really come up that often in the game, so you just kind of roll with it, you know?
She asked him his name, and he panicked because he didn't want to answer her and said Kevin. But that was a lie. But the problem is it's been years, and she continues to call him Kevin, and he's too embarrassed to tell her that he lied about his name, so he's just Kevin now.
I'm okay with that. That's my new headcanon. I looked around for nearby people. Everyone else on the beach was engaged in the fireworks. I turned my head back to my shoulder and my eyes found hers. She smiled.
I love you, Doctor.
How cliched can you get? That's actually the line. Not even the... I heard those words... What?
That's such a great response to a love confession.
How cliched. Just very blunt. I love it.
Cinema sings your wedding vows.
I heard those words from her for the first time as she leaned against my shoulder on a warm summer night, watching the fireworks explode in the air. It just seemed so perfect. This girl that I had secretly loved for 2 years just admitted that the feeling was mutual. My life was perfect.
Hold on, I'm about to do some. Hold on, let me check something real quick. Just did some math. The math isn't mathing. Uh-oh.
I love you too, Ellie. When everyone left, we sat for a moment enjoying each other's company. Then she headed off to behind the beach house and changed into her suit, and I changed on the beach. I walked over to the dock and sat on the edge, dangling my feet in the water.
I'm ready.
I turned around and there she was, my gorgeous Ellie, unburdened by her frumpy dress and housewife-esque apron, standing on the beach in a string bikini. Okay, even as a young person, I hated that line. Because she does not look like I'm not slut-shaming or anything like that, nothing wrong with bikinis or whatever, but she is not the kind of character who would wear something like that. I just kind of, that always kind of bothered me even as a kid.
She seems kind of like either like a one-piece or like a tankini type person.
Yeah, she really does, but I mean... Whatever, author's gonna do their story, so...
It's fine, I can say it.
Yeah. I could appreciate her curves for the first time now, and I took in her shape greedily. She walked up to me and slid her arms around my waist, hugging me. Suddenly we lost our balance and tumbled into the water, laughing all the way down. Our lips met and we reveled in each other's kisses. Somehow the suits were lost in our passion, and we lost ourselves under the moonlight. Somehow they were lost.
Hey, Kevin, take a seat.
Yeah, I was actually gonna... I might edit this part out, but I was actually gonna have, I wanted the cover of this video to have, Chris Hansen kind of peeking out of the corner, you know?
Not like a photo and, just a normal, maybe a screenshot from Sailor Moon, but, Chris Hansen is, in the background, in the shadows, the opacity very low.
Yeah. Maybe I'll have to go over. I'm not really an artistic person. I'll have to talk with whoever's doing that.
I'll work on something.
Thank you. For the next 2 seasons, she was my lover. Of course, no one could know of it. What would the village say if they knew what exactly I was doing with that particular minor? 22-year-old men should be with women their own age, not with teenagers.
What are you doing with that particular minor? That's a sentence. Boy, that's a sentence.
Yeah. that one in particular. The other ones are okay.
The most sentence of all time.
But that didn't stop us. She would complain of an almost nightly stomachache to her grandmother and would end up at the clinic overnight. Of course, her stomach was fine, so was every other part of her, and I knew her body so intimately that I would know if anything was wrong. Ugh. I knew the shape of the birthmark on her thigh, as well as the back of my hand. Life was wonderful.
If this is spoilers, is he going to murder
Okay.
her and take her skin? Because this sounds like he's going to murder her and take her skin.
He is. It does sound a little creepy. I don't know. Obviously, it's supposed to be romantic that he knows every piece of her, but yeah, it's a little weird.
Yeah.
One morning, she came to the clinic, her face drawn with worry. I took her into my embrace and asked her what the matter was.
I missed it,
she said, wringing her apron in her hands. It was full of wrinkles, so I assumed she had been doing this for a while.
Twice. What's the time period for Harvest? Like, I can tell from the dress. Like, what are we? Is this like 1700s, 1800s?
No, actually, Harvest Moon. Like there's actually electronics in this.
Oh, so it's kind of like ambiguous.
It's an ambiguous.
Is it modern day or
it's an ambiguous time, but these games in particular, like the game that this was based off of came out in the 90s. So I always assumed it was like my headcanon is that it's the 90s, but it's like a very remote rural town, a little more traditional values, you know.
Okay.
So,
all right.
If that makes sense. What did you miss? I asked, fearing for the worst. She looked straight into my eyes, and my worries were confirmed. She was carrying my unwanted child. What can we do? I inquired, holding her hands to keep her from wrinkling her apron more. That was the priority. She sighed mournfully, and tears ran down her cheeks.
I don't believe in abortions, but, oh, Kevin, I can't ruin my life this way.
Yeah, that's kind of... With that, she fell into my arms, her liquid misery seeping into my shirt. Liquid misery seeping into my shirt. That's a new one.
That is a line written, like, just by reading that, I'd be like, oh yeah, the person who wrote this was like I'm getting a whiff of a 14-year-old in 2009.
Yeah.
Definitely used an active MySpace user.
Yeah, this was more 2003, though, when she wrote this, so it's a little earlier than that, but yeah, same deal.
Yeah.
I had no choice but to get her the antidote. The antidote. Okay. That's a weird word for it, isn't it?
Yeah. It kind of implies that it's like a little thing you sip.
Yeah, or like the baby's is just a poison that you have.
Yeah. You used to be able to get it at CVS, then, you know.
Yeah, I guess when you live in small farming towns, you just gotta make do with, like, what you have.
Yeah, you just mix together, to get some random berries and some random roots. One of them will do something. The trick is it might do more than just that. That's what you gotta watch out for.
Yeah, there are a lot of natural herbs that can be used to end a pregnancy, which I would, given what's going on in this country right now, I'd highly recommend be careful when you're Googling that stuff, because you don't want people knowing your search history.
Because there was a lot of home remedies, but a lot of them were written in such a way that was like, now remember, be careful not to mix this quantity of this herb, this quantity of this herb, this quantity of this root in together in a mixture, stirring it for like 2 minutes. Don't do that, because if you do that and drink that, you will no longer be pregnant, and we don't want that. So be careful not to mix these exact ingredients and these quantities. Like there was a few of those running around.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going on during Prohibition too, with like making your own alcohol.
Yeah,
which is pretty
I know how
funny.
to make a mead. I don't do it because it's illegal, and also I'm not interested in alcohol. But like, if I need to make mead, I know how to make it.
Sure, yeah. I had no choice but to get her the antidote. It hurt so badly I knew what I was doing when I removed the child from her womb. I was killing my own baby. I was a murderer, and I had killed my own child. I hated myself for it, and I knew that Ellie hated herself too. That winter was a cold one indeed.
It's 2 months. Like, there's nothing there. Like, just give her something to drink. Like, mix up the right thing for her to drink. And like, if there's nothing. Like, there's nothing. There's not like even like in the sense, even if you're like, oh, life begins at conception. Like, there's not like a lot. Like, you wouldn't have to like go in there and remove much of anything. There's not much there. There's not much there, my guy.
Yeah, 14 years old, Farmer Jen, still learning about the world, you know.
Yeah, the internet wasn't big, so they're fine.
Yeah. Spring came, along with Ellie's 18th birthday. It cheered us slightly that we were doing together was now legitimate. What we were doing together was now legitimate. In celebration, we walked up to the top of Mother's Hill, looking out at the fantastic view below us. Below. As we sat there holding each other and watching the sunset, we heard footsteps behind us. We turned and there was none other than Pastor Carter taking a walk. We threw ourselves apart, but it was too late. Carter had spotted us.
So that's why Ellie's never been home at night,
he said.
How long have you been seeing each other?
My mind filled with dread. He knew. The purest man in the village knew what we had been sleeping together for the past 2 seasons. How could we get out of this one? Carter sighed, shaking his head.
You do know it's a sin to bed before you're married, right? That's the only problem I find in this situation. I'm Pastor Carter.
That's what I was about to when I was rereading this. It's like, yeah, the whole situation of him like low-key grooming a minor and sleeping with her, that's not the issue here. The issue is they're not married.
Good thing that doesn't happen in real life.
Yeah, I know. I just think it's funny that that's what his priority is here. I looked at Ellie. Her eyes were cast to the ground, ashamed. I looked up at the pastor, biting my lip. Please don't tell anyone, I pleaded. It would ruin Ellie's life. She'd be called a whore when she was walked through the streets, and I don't know if I could take it. like, I guess, again, this is like the 90s-ish, but I guess they're doing the whole Game of Thrones shame walk, you know?
Yeah, back in the day, they'd walk down the streets and people would crowd on either side of the street and just say, whore, 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 over and over again, and they did it in shifts.
Yeah.
So there's always somebody.
I'm very upset I never got this cutscene when I played Friends of Mineral Town. Very disappointed indeed. Ellie looked at me. What?
I opened up, I went to the thrift store and I bought a game of Harvest Moon, and the guy at the check was like, thank God I got that off of my hands. I booted it up, for some reason it was just Ellie, and she looked real sad because everyone was pointing at her and calling her a whore as she walked down the street. I thought, hey, this is pretty weird, but I got it for 50 cents, so I just kept playing.
Oh no, I don't think I've ever encountered any Harvest Moon. I'm sure there is Harvest Moon creepypasta out there. I've just never encountered it.
Yeah.
Ellie looked at me, shocked.
You won't be around to be upset about it,
she cried.
You'd be in jail for sleeping with a minor.
Wow, confession. Okay. My eyes widened. It was true. I'd go to jail for being in love with Ellie. Carter looked at us and put his hands in a pocket of his robe, searching for something. He pulled the hand out, and in it were 2 gold rings and 2 silver chains. He looked up at us.
Take these,
he said.
You two can't get married yet. You're much too young. It would ruin both your lives. But this way, you'll be married in spirit, and I won't have to tell the villagers that you've been doing anything illegal. Husband and wives are supposed to make love, right? Wow.
So,
I think that,
first of all, she's 18 now, so technically they could, but whatever.
I guess the thing that makes this, but people wouldn't. I think that's the thing that makes this so, because this isn't an unrealistic scenario. I can't think, a lot of times when, it's like, who would do, I'm like, no, that happens. That happens often. This is an example that happens often.
Yeah. Apparently,
wow.
It's okay to sleep with a minor as long as your relationship is blessed by a priest. Which, that's all the jokes I'm going to make about that.
Yeah, Google United States child marriage for more information. This country is a mistake. This country is a hellhole.
Yeah, it's fucking wild.
Yeah.
We took the rings, strung them on the chains, and hung them around our necks, hiding them inconspicuously under our clothing.
Thank you, Pastor!
Screamed Ellie, throwing her arms around his neck. I shook Carter's hand, knowing that
there couldn't be any witnesses.
Yeah, they're gonna be witnesses now if she screamed. I shook Carter's hand, knowing that I would be forever grateful to him. These would last us until we were ready to get married for real. 2 years passed in relative quiet. Ellie still lived with her grandmother, though her nights were spent with me in the clinic. We lived in almost as much happiness as a married couple. Our only problem, the fear that we would be discovered. I mean, it doesn't... she's 18 now. It doesn't really matter, but okay. But other than that, our lives were happy. Or so I thought. Dun, dun, dun. One day, a new farmer came to the village. He inherited the farm that his grandfather had just left behind when he died. The farmer's name was Jack, and he was a really nice guy. The first time he walked into the clinic, he had scraped up his knee pretty badly, and Ellie gave him a bandage. Weeks passed by, and Jack became a great friend of mine. He brought me wine occasionally, and I marveled at the kindness of this man I barely knew. He flirted with Ellie a bit, but I didn't dislike him. How could he know that we were lovers? One night, as Ellie lay in my arms after a bout of lovemaking, she talked to me about Jack.
Did I tell you that he asked me to the Goddess Festival?
She asked me. I shook my head. What did you say? I asked, tensing in fear. Ellie felt me... That's a little weird, I don't know. She felt me tense and she laughed.
I told him that I was going with someone else, of course.
She kissed me on my nose.
Don't be jealous, Kevy. You know I would never go with anyone but you, and all the while, that he's just really wishing that he could have the courage to come clean and admit the fact that his name isn't Kevin. Yeah. He's actually got the other townspeople in on. He's like, listen, if Eli comes by, my name's Kevin. But I know that's not my name, but like it's been 5 or 6 years, and I can't let her know that my name's not Kevin. It's too awkward. It's
also awkward. I mean, she also says she'd never go with anyone else but him, but apparently they're still keeping everything secret despite the fact that she's like in her early 20s now at this point.
We're co-workers. It's fine.
Yeah.
You go with your co-workers. You go with your co-workers to the Goddess Festival. It's a business that way you can write off as a business expense on your taxes.
That makes as much sense as, yeah.
What? Dating a minor? No, the only crime I'm committing is tax fraud.
In this country, that might be worse.
Oh, yeah.
In terms of how much jail time they hit you with.
Yeah, how much jail time, whether you can take up public office again.
Wow, this video became strangely political.
Just me taking pot shots. No meaning behind it.
Yeah. I laughed as well, my nervousness abating. How could I ever doubt her? Well, you never know, I said teasingly. You're a gorgeous girl, and it would be easy enough for some guy to decide to steal you away. The seasons came and went. At about midsummer, Ellie informed me that her grandmother was ill, and that she would be sleeping at home to make sure she was all right. I was sad, but I kissed her goodbye and gave her a bottle of Botagizer for her grandmother. That's a medicine in the game, by the way.
Got ya.
She kissed me back, but for some reason her kiss seemed colder than usual. Perhaps I was just overreacting from the fact that I would be sleeping alone for a while. A week later, when the clinic was closed, I went out for a walk. Ellie's grandmother sat on a rocking chair outside of her house, and I waved to her as I passed by. She didn't seem to be ill. In fact, she seemed to be the picture of perfect health. I pushed those thoughts out of my brain, reminding myself that looks could often be deceiving. Feeling better? I asked. She looked at me, puzzled.
I guess.
She said, smiling. And the author actually author's been pretty good about breaking their dialogue by paragraphs. I think this is the first time. She said, smiling as if some child had just proposed that the moon would be made of What? Did you get that?
I think it's like child said something dumb, and that's obviously dumb, so you're just kind of like humoring them.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for bringing me back down to earth from the cheese moon. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I've got a rant I can make about the cheese moon, but now is not the time for that.
I would have questioned her on this, but I was expected at someone's home, and I couldn't stop to chat. I felt suspicion well up in me like an overflowing bathtub. What was up with Ellie? Why was she acting so strangely lately? It baffled me, and over the next few weeks I watched her a little closer. One day in autumn, as I sat in my office, writing up a report on the health of the villagers, I heard the door open and close. I ignored it and continued my work. Soon I heard giggling. I paused in my report. That wasn't the kind of laugh she had when she was giggling with one of her friends over the latest gossip in the village. No, that was the sound Ellie made when I kissed the side of her neck when we were sat alone in the back pews in church. What? Whoa. Why are they kissing in church? I thought they were trying to keep this private.
In the house of God, no less.
Yeah, Carter is watching and he's ashamed. Or trailed my fingers up the inside of her thighs when we were supposed to be watching the sunrise on New Year's Eve.
He's like, hey, you two aren't married.
Yeah, how dare you touch each other, you consenting adults. That was the quiet, tried to be inconspicuous sound Ellie made when she was doing something naughty in the same room as other people. And it wasn't with me. I peeked out from behind the curtains that served the walls as the walls of my office, only putting my head out far enough to see Ellie's position at the reception desk. I had done this often over the years, watching as she idly filed her nails while waiting for someone to enter the clinic, or as she pointed out pretty dresses and catalogs with the occasional visiting friend. But this time, what I saw wasn't happy, and I wasn't gazing dreamily at her while she played solitaire at the reception desk. Yeah, you can tell this was before cell phones. Because who plays solitaire anymore?
I don't know.
Weirdly enough, my wife does. I don't get it. Like, she has a phone and she plays solitaire on it.
My granddad, my granddad plays it, like, constantly, and it's one of those solitaire apps that have, like, sound to it, like little noise when you get the cards, and the reason why I know that is because he always has the volume on max.
I guess, you gotta really, if you really want to appreciate solitaire, you gotta have all the sound effects, so.
Can't wait for solitaire in the meta. If only Zuckerberg would add solitaire to the metaverse, surely it wouldn't be such a flop.
Yeah, I would have bought my headset or whatever. I would have totally gone to play.
There's no point for me because solitaire requires Facebook, and I can't get a Facebook account. I think it's because I have a very generic last name. Facebook doesn't believe that I'm a real person. Like, I try to make an account, and in an instant, it's like, you're not a real person. You're attempting to make a fake account, even if I put like my actual legal name. So I straight up cannot get a Facebook account.
Honestly, the way things are going right now, you're probably not missing much.
I mean, yeah, but I want to play Beat Saber, and I can't, because all the VR is hooked up to the Meta, so I straight up, I can't.
Well, that's a shame. You gotta tell Zuckerberg to get it on his game, then. That you back on Facebook.
Hey, Mark, what the fuck?
Yeah, Mark Zuckerberg, if you're watching this video, get Luna on Facebook.
Hey, Mark, you keeping me out of Facebook is the second worst thing you've ever done.
Oh, jeez. Jack was behind her chair, running his hands along her upper arms, kissing the sides of her neck, as I had done so many times before over the past 2 years. My jaw dropped as I saw his hands wander to her breasts, fondling them as only I had before. His hands went back up to the collar of her dress and slipped inside it. 2 separate words there. Feeling down her chest, he stopped suddenly and pulled his hand back up, holding something. It was our ring. What is this thing? He asked quietly, looking at her. I was gonna ask you why you wear it if you're just gonna take it off every night before we do it. That was really on the nose, huh?
I sure hope the doc isn't overhearing this.
Yeah,
it sure would be a shame if James heard me talking like this. Who's James? The doc.
It is kind of dumb, though, she's doing this in the office where apparently they only have curtains separating each other. It's not like there's walls or doors. It's just if you're in the it's like in a sitcom when you're in a separate room and you can talk, even if there's like open space, no one can hear you.
Yeah, it's fine.
Ellie smiled at him, and I felt my heart pang with grief. That was my smile. Mine. Tat was the smile she had given me on that summer night at the fireworks show when she told me she loved me.
I'm trying to figure out where we are. I'm pretty sure that it's oh, I got it. It's nothing,
she said.
Just some useless piece of junk.
With that, she took the necklace from Jack's hands and tossed it in the trash. That was a gold ring! What the hell? At least sell that shit. I pulled my head back into my office, staring through the unfinished report in my lap. It all made sense now. My lonely nights, the cold kisses that had grown sparse, her lack of desire for the public affection that she had once loved. Public affection, okay. I thought they don't seem like they're trying to keep this too private.
It's fine. Coworkers hold hands all the time.
Yeah. Coworkers also touch each other's thighs in public all the time.
Yeah.
And kiss each other on the neck. I guess it's, again, like you said, all business expenses.
It helps to if your boss tells you to stop, it's because they hate unions.
God damn it. The healthy grandmother, sitting outside of her house, looked at me like I was a fool. And I was a fool. How right she was. The giggling continued and I heard Ellie speak.
You better go, Jack.
She whispered. To me, it sounded like a booming roar. I
don't want old Grumpy over there to hear us.
Too late.
Yeah, that ship has sailed to harbor.
Maybe, yeah, if you're, it's, I don't know if you, I don't know, do you watch the Try Guys at all?
No, except, for recent events have made me know a lot more about them than I knew before.
Yeah, my wife watches the show, she loves it, but it's like the whole thing with how, Ned from Try Guys was cheating on his wife, and they saw him doing it in like a public space, like in a nightclub. It's like, if you're gonna cheat on your significant other, don't do it where you're obviously gonna get caught.
So the way I heard it was at a Harry Styles concert, which is infinitely funnier.
That might be funnier if that's the case. I don't know enough about the Try Guys. I just know that, yeah.
Yeah, I know.
That's
I know
date this
next
video.
to nothing. I just know that the situation happened, and I was like, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. Jack laughed. Of course not, he returned. I heard the sound of a kiss on her cheek. My cheek. Wait. The sound of the kiss on her cheek. My cheek. And he's very possessive.
I almost reading this, I almost feel like the story, I know you said earlier it's like Jack's supposed to be the bad guy, but honestly reading this, it feels like a very like unreliable narrator type sort of thing. You know, like this feels like, you know, it feels like you're hearing this from Kevin. I'm saying it in I'm doing air quotes. You're hearing this from Kevin's point of view, but there's some cognitive distortion, and you're not supposed to root for him. Like that's the kind of vibe I'm getting. So far, Jack has not flirted with any minors, which means I'm on his side.
Yeah, that actually, I have more to say about that later. I said earlier that Jack is the antagonist because he's actually, to Farmer Jen's credit, I think this was very interesting of her, he's actually written very differently in every chapter, every story in this book. Like, these are all the different chapters are different stories. He's written differently of every one. Like, there's one of them where he's an absolute bastard. Here, he's just some guy who might not even recognize that they're dating. He doesn't even know that this is necessarily infidelity. So he's not really a bad guy here.
Well, maybe. Like, I guess the thing about the word antagonist is that an antagonist doesn't necessarily mean a villain. It means someone who opposes the protagonist. And that can be a villain, but it doesn't have to be.
Yeah. Like, he's not a villain in this one, but he's a villain in one of the other chapters. We're not gonna read that one. I'm just saying that his personality is actually written differently every time, which I actually kind of like, because it does it kind of gives these stories a little more diversity.
Yeah.
I felt my heart twist in pain and disappear into nothingness. I continued to stare through the document on my lap until Ellie popped her head into my office.
I'm going home, okay, Doc? You didn't hear anything, did you?
You didn't hear me cheating on you blatantly, right?
Yeah, you didn't hear that, did you?
She continued to look at me, tilting her head.
You don't look so good. Are you sure you didn't hear anything? Maybe you should go to bed early tonight.
I nodded. She took the papers from my hands and smiled.
I'll finish this,
she said.
I'm sure Grandma won't mind if I take a break from feeding her spoonfuls of Botsiger to do a little paperwork. Night.
The door opened and closed again, and Ellie walked out of the clinic. I turned off all the lights and locked up, doing everything mechanically. I found myself in bed staring up at the dark ceiling. My head turned to the empty pillow to my left, and I remembered the head that used to lay there, the big brown eyes that would open in the morning, look into mine, and then work together with the mouth to make what I thought was my personal smile. I remembered walking up to see those eyes staring down at the ring that she wore around her neck, fiddling with it. I remembered so many things. Everything about her seemed to be embedded in that pillow. I looked down at my body and saw that I had automatically curved into the position I would have taken to line up against her body, my arm draped across the empty bed. I felt the tears come freely now, spilling down onto the empty pillow, into what would have been her hair. A week later, Ellie came to me smiling brightly.
I have great news, Doctor,
she exclaimed. I feigned a smile. What's up?
Jack asked me to marry him.
I somehow kept the fake smile on my face, pretending to be understanding. That's great, I said, wondering if I would explode at that moment. This is really weird, though, because she doesn't know that he knows she cheated on him.
Like, that's what I'm saying. This feels like we are this story feels like we like my the way I'm picturing the story being told is Dr. Kevin is at like a tavern or something, and he's giving us, the audience, like the play-by-play, and like we are aware that this isn't like the full story of what happened or whatever, but like we're listening to him tell his like distorted side of the story. Like this feels like an unreliable narrator. Like there's something there. Like
it does feel really weird because it's like they never had a conversation about breaking up or anything like that. They were in their minds, kind of like married in spirit or whatever, but then suddenly like he asked me to marry him, I'm gonna marry him, and it's gonna be great. It's like you're missing a few steps here.
It's been 3 seasons, so it's been 3 years, so things can happen.
I think 3 seasons is a little, well, it's been longer than the time in Harvest Moon is a little weird because they don't measure by months, they measure by seasons, and like a season's within 1 year, so you have the spring, summer, fall, winter. It can be a little confusing. I don't even know how long it's been. I don't know how old they are now. Like still like 20s, I guess.
Yeah, so it's been 9 months. So if we assume that it's like 3. It's been 9 months, so stuff can happen in 9 months.
Yeah, I think that they're definitely. Yeah, I don't know. So Ellie leapt at me and hugged me, the first genuine hug I'd gotten from her in 3 seasons.
I just knew you'd approve. She
cried and kissed me on the cheek. I beamed at her, hoping that it looked real. She ran out of the clinic screaming with joy, and I let my face drop. When I thought about her walking out of my life, I definitely didn't expect her to be skipping as she did so, much less screaming with happiness. I willed the tears away for now, saving them for her wedding, hoping that people would think I was just a sensitive man at a happy event, and not a blubbering, love-deprived fool. You don't have to go to the wedding if you don't want, dude.
Nah, he's gonna.
Yeah, he's gonna. I mean, I guess, if you go, again, maybe he'll just write that up as another tax deduction, so.
He's waiting for when they do does anybody object?
Yeah.
He's got to rehearse for that.
Yeah. Actually, when I got married, we were joking about hiring an actor to play a spurned lover of my wife that I could punch out in the middle of the ceremony.
Hilarious.
We didn't do it, though, because my mother would have hated it, but... I sat alone in the back pew at the wedding. I didn't want to be near anyone else, though sitting in that pew pained me. I couldn't hold back the many memories that flooded me there, making me remember that I had done what I had done in that pew with the bride in previous years. I watched as Jack kissed Ellie on the lips, in the position that I had always hoped I would end up in, but of course not. That would never happen to Old Grumpy. Old Grumpy would be a bachelor for life, watching the younger people get married and have happy lives with big families. Has anyone ever been so bitter at their best friend's wedding? Probably not. Who could be bitterer than Old Grumpy? Maybe that is his actual name. Maybe that's actually his name instead of Kevin.
I guess that's why he said my name's Kevin.
Yeah, he lied because that's a terrible name.
Yeah, here's the thing. My parents looked at me and were like, "Oh, this guy sucks."
The tears flowed from my eyes many more times after that wedding. I was alone in the clinic all the time. Sure, the customers kept me company, but I was never as close to any of them as I was to Ellie. My best friend beside her had been Jack, and he never came to the clinic at all after he married Ellie. Well, except once, when he found out Ellie was pregnant. I guess Jack also just never got hurt ever again. Like, he was just immortal. When he told me that she was carrying his child, I faked a smile and told him how wonderful it was, and what he had to do to take care of his pregnant wife. But inside, I was seething. I wanted nothing more than to tell him that Ellie had been carrying my child first, but I had cared for her reputation so much that I had killed that child with my bare hands to preserve it.
Sir?
That's gruesome.
What did you do? That's
I just reached in there and pulled it out, I guess, you know?
Like,
I wanted to laugh in his face and tell him that it had been I that had taken her virginity. Oh, man, look at this guy's fucking petty. I who had to buy different methods of birth control to keep from impregnating her again and again.
This is like Ace Attorney witness freakout mode.
Yeah. He went a little bit, I don't know. I don't know the word for this. I who had to buy, okay, yeah. It took me one to try to get her pregnant, and it took him 3 whole seasons. Oh, burn. Fucking burn. He was a huge loser, and my sperm... Whoa, I don't remember this line. And my sperm were better, so there.
Average, least deranged Twitter user. This guy has a rant sona.
Yeah, you're right. The Dr. Kevin is the Dr. Old Grumpy's a huge loser.
This man is on Skeptic YouTube.
Yeah, if he didn't get laid, he would have been a total incel. But of course, I couldn't say that. I let my professional voice take over and tell him what to do and what she should eat. He asked me to be present at the birth, and I gladly told him that I wouldn't miss it for anything in the world and would make sure that the baby would come out safely. Unfortunately, I had to stay true to my word. The day came all too soon, and I helped Ellie get Jack's child into the world. I was the first one to hold her baby girl in my arms, and the first one to see those big, soft brown eyes looking into mine. Such betrayal by a woman I loved and a man that I had liked, and yet I loved the result of it. 15 years later, a teenage girl with big brown eyes and a cute, shapeless dress came to the doorstep of the clinic. She asked me to teach her everything I knew. I complied. Oh, he's just gonna do it again.
Hold on a minute. Okay.
So, anyway,
I'm reading this through. I reading this stage, I genuinely believe, like, sometimes you're like, oh, this would be really cool if it was this would be a really cool story if the author was, like, self-aware how weird and creepy it is. I'm gonna give the author a lot of credit. I genuinely believe, at least at this chapter, that, like, this is I refuse to believe that, like, that Old Grumpy over here isn't an intentional, unreliable narrator. Like, I believe, like, maybe, like you said, maybe Jack's characterization changes from chapter to chapter. I believe wholeheartedly, and it would take the author herself telling me otherwise to make me believe that, like, that this maybe not in all the stories, But in this case, maybe you're not supposed to be, maybe if you're not rooting for Jack, you're definitely supposed to be rooting against the narrator. And there was no way that you would imply, like, there's no way that you can have your main character utter the phrase, he was a huge loser and my sperm was better, so there. And, like, and he's supposed to be, like, the guy that you're rooting for. Like, the guy that, like, that, this is good, unreliable narrator type, that's,
What's interesting about this chapter also is, like, I haven't read the other chapters in a while. In the other chapters, the guy, like, it's hard to, you can't really be on this guy's side when, you know, he did, like, the thing is, we're supposed to be rooting for him, but he was having sexual relationships with a minor and everything else, and then you hear all this, like, inner monologue, which makes him seem like a total loser. In the other chapters, the characters aren't doing that, so it's like, the male characters you're supposed to be rooting for, they're not nearly as bad as this. They're not, like, they're a lot more sympathetic.
Yeah, this one, like, I'm getting unreliable narrator. I'm getting Lolita vibes. Like, this is an intentional, like, unreliable narrator type thing. I choose, especially when you said this story and the way that this is described is different from the rest. Like, I'm going to give, like, because, you know, 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds, they're not, like, as dumb as people say they are. So I am choosing to believe, until I am given evidence otherwise, like, this one is, maybe you're not rooting for Jack, but you are supposed to be rooting against the narrator. Like, I choose to believe that. I refuse to believe otherwise. Yeah.
And again, though, but as I was saying earlier also, like, the author, she was young when she wrote this. She admits that the stories, she doesn't think the story is good. It's one of those things, I do look at this and, like, you know, again, when this story we just read now is better than a lot of the other stuff we've written by other people. So I do look at this and say, you know, it was written by a young person. You can tell that this is written by someone who, when she wrote it, she's still, like, when you're 14 or 15 years old, you're still learning about life. You're not going to know, like, this definitely shows in this that this was written by a younger person, basically.
Yeah, like, I believe this is written by the one, and I'm not saying it's, like, perfectly well written. I'm saying that, like, I don't think this, like, I don't think sometimes young kids write, especially this kind of thing, young kids write creepy stuff because they don't realize it's creepy because they're young and have very little experience. And sometimes they write creepy stuff and maybe it's not the most well written, but, like, they know what they're writing is creepy and they're trying to write it as creepy. And I think that the author was trying, like, from reading it, my opinion is maybe it's not the most well written thing, but I think that, I believe that they were aware that they were writing about something that was creepy, and they were and that was an intentional thing they were trying to do. Like, I believe that.
If that is the case, I'd give this a lot more credit than I was initially going to. But I mean, I do, again, I did read this story a whole lot as a kid. I think I was like, I think I was probably, like, junior high when I first read this. So, of course, and I definitely wasn't, I definitely thought the Doctor was a loser back then too, just based on, like, some of the shit that happens.
Like, it's not, like, this guy is it's not, because, like, if the intent was to write this person as, like, as, like, a sympathetic person who, maybe, like, a sympathetic, and you weren't supposed to see him as, like, a complete and utter weirdo that you're not supposed to root for, I feel like it would have stopped maybe with, like, the line, like, maybe would have ended with, like, when he found, like, except for once, when he found out that Ellie was pregnant, or hoping that people would think I was just a sensitive man at a happy event, not a blubbering, love-deprived fool. Maybe, probably not, who could be bitterer than old Grumpy, but, like, everything after, like, but the paragraph where it's, like, when I told him he was carrying my child, and that whole rant, like, I don't believe that was written, like, those, like, maybe, like, last, like, paragraph, like, few lines after that, I do not believe that was written by an author who thought that the main character they were writing about was, like, a sympathetic person you were supposed to root for. Like, because it comes off, like, pathetic, but not in a pathetic you feel bad for him way, but in more of the, the author is kicking the character on the ground and inviting you to join in.
Okay. I mean, I'll be honest, I'm not completely sure if that's what was going on here, but I do like that better. And I like to believe I like to believe that's the case then.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, again, you can tell this story was written by someone who's a little younger, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And this story definitely kind of started my love for this kind of story where there's a certain brokenness about it. I do like that kind of thing. There's another one I might do another time, which also kind of really plays into that, and that's a story for another day, though. Otherwise, like I said before, don't contact or review on the story. The other chapters, if you're interested, are there. They do a little bit of a different story every time, so it's actually it's pretty cool to read. And again, this was one of those, like, very early on in the fandom, this story definitely stuck out compared to most of the stories we were getting. So.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, and this is, I don't know when this is coming out, but this is, something that I think that we want to say for the rest of, like, the stories reading recently. So, in order to deal with spam, fanfiction, if you're someone who uses fanfiction.net because you haven't started using AO3 yet, in order to, deal with spam, fanfiction.net has set it up so that, like, they turn your email notifications off, and you have to open up your account and turn email notifications on, and you do it every 6 months. So if you are I don't really have that many stories that I'm reading on fanfiction.net that update regularly. I use AO3, but if you have any fics that update frequently, and you might want to go in there and make sure you're getting email notifications, because so check that out. That's a little PSA.
Yeah, I heard about that. I keep my notifications on. I like to check up on things. I'm on both AO3 and fanfiction.net. But yeah. So I would also say to anyone, in terms of people making suggestions, if anyone ever did want us to read a story that they read from their childhood that they liked as a kid, but maybe they kind of grew out of it now, you can put it in the requests, but make sure you mention it as being a story. It's like, this is something I unironically liked as a kid, and I think it'd be interesting to look at now in present day.
I can't promise that, like, if it's length does not necessarily matter, although if it's a longer fic, then we might not get to, like, if it's a longer fic, I might not get to it unless it's, like, a fandom that, like, I was interested in at the time, and, like, sorry, I'm rambling. Point I'm trying to make is, like, shorter fics are better, but if there was a long fic that you really liked growing up, as long as it's not, like, 300,000, 400,000 words or something like that, like, send that there, but just if you're giving us a longer fic, you gotta give us a little bit of a pitch.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm gonna say this also, the reason I chose this story is because every chapter is a different story. It's not a continuous story. Shorter things might be a little better in that regard, because we might not read something that's 20 chapters long, but we don't mind reading, like, one chapter,
Yeah.
But, okay. So yeah, just let us know if there's anything else you're interested in like that, and remember, if you do not like, do not read.
This was a lot of fun.
Yep. Later.